Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, Quality Pays, Turning Data into Business Value, sponsored by Octave, formerly ETQ. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief for Quality Digest, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. As a quality leader, you're increasingly expected to do more than manage compliance. You need to demonstrate how quality initiatives contribute to broader business goals. But which metrics matter the most? And how can you communicate value in a way that resonates with executive leadership? Well, today we're going to look at connecting quality data to measurable business outcomes. We'll learn how to develop a framework for measuring quality's contributions to business success, identify the metrics that have the greatest influence on executive stakeholders, and use ROI modeling tools to quantify value, support investment decisions, and drive continuous improvement. But before we get started, just a reminder that you can send us questions using the Q&A box. You can find the Q&A button in a bar down there at the bottom of your screen. Just mouse down. You should see it. Send your questions to us as you think of them, and we will address them following the presentation. A recording of this webinar will be available one day after the webinar. Keep your eyes open for that. It'll come from Quality Digest. And also, important, those of you who need a certificate of attendance, you must answer at least one of the polling questions that will come up during the webinar. All right. Today's presenters are Jennifer Bianchini, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Octave, formerly ETQ, and David Isaacson, Vice President of Product Marketing at Octave. Jennifer brings more than 12 years of experience in lead marketing roles, from product marketing and demand generation to product management for software as a solution organizations in several industries. And David has more than 25 years experience in software product marketing and product management. At Octave, he helped bring to market a new SaaS quality management system, analytics capabilities, and AI-enabled solutions. And Jennifer, I believe you are starting us off.
All right. Thanks for the introductions, Dirk. Appreciate it. And welcome, everyone. We're so glad you're here. So today's webinar is a little bit different from what you may be used to seeing when you attend a webinar. Today, we're going to go beyond talking about quality. We're going to dive into how you can build a compelling ROI case for your quality initiatives. So here's a quick look at our agenda, what we'll cover. We'll start with a quick overview of an ROI, what it means and why it matters. Then we'll explore how to strategically approach an ROI from a quality perspective. So what makes it different and how you can align it to your business goals. Then we're going to dig into where you can find the data. So both within your organization and through benchmarks to support your ROI case. Then we're going to show you how we at Octave can help you optimize your ROI using our tools and expertise. And then finally, as Dirk said, we're going to have plenty of time at the end for a Q&A. So if you got your questions, go ahead and drop them into that box, because today is about empowering you with the insights and tools that you need to be a quality champion in your organization. So you can be someone who can confidently connect the quality initiatives to the business value. All right, so before we start, I would love to kick things off with a quick poll question. So when you're thinking about building an ROI for your quality management system, what area of the ROI is the most challenging for your organization? So for you, pulling that information together. So taking a look at some of the options here, is it just finding accurate data? Maybe it's aligning the ROI with the business goals, or maybe it's getting that buy-in from your leadership team. Or is it the different type of cost? You have a difficult time differentiating between the soft cost and the hard cost. And maybe you're not sure, and that's okay, because we're all here to learn. So we'll give it about a second or two to see the results. And while we're waiting for those to come in, you know, David, you have a lot of experience working with customers who are putting an ROI together. I'm curious to know, What do you see, or what have you come across as the biggest challenge with people when they're trying to put an ROI together for a QMS?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because when I look at these answers, sometimes I think they're more than just one and they kind of interrelate with each other. So obviously the data, we've seen a lot of organizations struggle. They don't measure things as accurately as you'd hope. So, getting that data, but then making sure that the data aligns with what the business expects and being able then to put that into a form that leadership can even understand. So I think it's
Yeah.
kind of interrelated when you look at that.
Yeah, true. All right. Well, I can't see the poll that's
Uh,
popping up for everyone. So,
one
um,
second here. 1 second here, and I'll
sure.
share this with
Well,
everybody. Hold on one
yeah,
second.
and David
There you go.
David, you'll probably see the results. I don't see them.
I do. Yeah.
Right. So, what do we got? Do we have a winner?
By just a little bit. And it's interesting. It's really close. The top four are within like a few percentage points of each other, but the first one was calculating soft versus hard costs, which
Mm,
is interesting. Then followed by getting leadership buy-in and finding accurate data, pretty much equal. Then aligning ROI with the business, and so a few people weren't sure, but most of the other four were fairly even.
yeah, I'm surprised. I thought finding accurate data would be the winner in this one. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everyone for indulging us in this. This was very insightful. So let's go ahead and get started here. All right. So before we start talking about ROI calculations, I want to introduce to you what is probably the most important concept from today's session. So, as quality professionals, we're often very good at discussing quality metrics, compliance requirements, audit outcomes, and corrective actions, and so on. Okay. But when we're asking for an investment and competing for budget within your organization, or you're presenting to the executives, those aren't always the metrics that will drive the decision. Leadership teams are typically focused on questions like how will this affect the revenue? Will this reduce costs, and how? How will this improve the productivity within the organization? And how quickly will they see a return? So, the organizations that we've seen that are the most successful in securing support for quality initiatives are the ones that can connect the quality activities directly to the business outcomes. So that's really our objective here today. So we're not trying to turn everyone here into finance experts. We're just trying to help you create a common language that allows quality, operations, finance, and the executive leadership teams to see the same value, but through different lenses. And once you understand where your organization is today and where improvement opportunities exist, you can start to quantify those gains and building a business case that is difficult to ignore. Now, next, we're going to take a closer look at what it means to connect quality activities to the business outcomes and why it plays such a significant role in driving enterprise value. All right. So, one of the first things you can start to do is to take that language that we use and know as quality professionals and translate that into the language of the business. So, this will help you bridge that gap between quality and business and understand the ROI. So, sounds great. But what do I mean? Well, let's break this down. So, as quality professionals, we talk about what you see here in the yellow sticky notes. So, continuous improvement, quality events, Six Sigma, etc. They're all very focused on quality. But what we don't do is talk in the business terms. So, profit, margin, expenses, or revenue. And that's what the CEOs and the CFOs talk about. But there are several areas of quality that cross over into the business. So think about your warranties, your recalls, scrap and waste. They have a real impact on the organization. So if we go from talking about the items here in quality to the items in the business, because when we do that, the warranty, the recalls, the scrap, and the waste, they start to drive the results when it comes to increasing revenue, reducing expenses, and increasing margins. And this becomes even more important if you are a public company where the annual report has all of this information. So not only is this information valuable, but it's very visible. So, as quality people, we need to communicate up and down the chain and bring it all together in a single vocabulary, because we have a real impact on our company's positioning in the market, and not just the products, but for the financial markets as well. So, now I'm going to turn it over to David, and he's going to share how to make the case for investing in quality. All right, David, over to you.
Thanks, Jennifer. So I know that that first statement could be a little bit controversial. Investing in quality isn't just about saving money, um, and I think as quality professionals, we take it much more broadly and think about it in terms of business value, because it's not just about saving money, right? It's about how do we make sure we're driving the right value for the organization? How do we make sure we're driving the right value for our customers? Um, Reducing costs is certainly important, and that impact can go far beyond um, just quality, though, right? I mean, we're looking at a top line and a bottom line uh, focus on the results that quality can have. And when we look at that, if we're trying to push revenue into the market, from the market, we're looking at making sure our customers are happy with the products we're selling them. If we're looking at investing in quality for our teams, it's not just about the hard costs. Jennifer talked about warranties and recalls and things like that, but how do we improve the productivity of our employees as well? Reduce manual labor intensive work, eliminating inefficiencies that slow our teams down, right? So we allow employees to spend more time doing the things that add value to the organization. Um, Better results internally by improving our employee perspective really can help build better products, can help build better processes. We get better feedback from the practitioners in the field to help us improve overall. It's for so many years, quality was seen as just a traffic cop, right? Where you stopped things from happening. You said no, right? That was a big part of the early days of quality, especially. But the last few years, we've seen such a change in how companies think about, how organizations think about the value of quality. So then we make sure that we're investing, and we're investing because we're probably seeing today a lot of economic headwinds, right? There's so many things going on in this world. So how do we work on making sure that with limited budgets, competing priorities, I mean, quality is not the only thing an organization is going to invest in potentially. So how do you make the case that we're investing the right money at the right time for the right results? And ROI, and you can see the formula on the screen, is just one of those metrics. It's a really critical one because that's what the C-suite cares about. But how do you make sure that all the competing needs are taken into account that an organization has for targeting quality as that investment? So we want to make sure we put the best case forward for that wise investment. So when we think about return on investment, there are key areas that we want to look at. Um, Jennifer showed the slide with all the different quality terms, and your CFO doesn't care about CAPAs. Your CEO doesn't care about audits potentially. I mean, maybe they do in some cases, but a quality audit probably not so much. You're not investing. Your CEO is not investing in document control. That's not what they care about. They're investing in business results, right? So that's where thinking about the ROI and where are the dimensions that you're going to measure that ROI against. So if we have 4 different dimensions or values that we show on the screen here. So we're looking at how do you reduce the cost of poor quality? That has been a long-term question that's been out in the quality world. first thing is to identify what is the cost of quality and what are all the different pieces that make up cost of quality and cost of poor quality. Reducing scrap, rework, complaints, things like that. Those are key things, and improving quality and profitability. Those are key items. But there's a lot that goes into the cost of quality. Some things you can see, a pile of scrap sitting in the dumpster out back. Yeah, that's pretty easy to measure. But what about the time it took somebody to take that scrap and put it in the dumpster? Something simple like that. What about all the write-ups? What about having to have additional inventory on hand because your yield is not where you want it to be, and therefore you have to have additional product, additional raw materials, maybe even additional carrying costs from an interest perspective? All those things play into the cost of poor quality. Streamlining operations. Talked a little bit about making employees more productive. If you can save a few minutes or an hour or 2 hours each day from a lot of the activities that employees are working on, that certainly can improve efficiency. Structured document management is a real easy one to look at, where you have access to the information when you need it, where you need it, instead of having to go search for specific documents. Maybe you got something in SharePoint, and I spend hours searching SharePoint to find specific PowerPoint presentations and files and things like that. I can imagine that spending hours doing that is not real productive for all of our employees. The third area we look at is risk of noncompliance, and certainly having the needing to be compliant. And if you're a life sciences organization, certainly you're mandated by law, by the FDA and other organizations to be compliant. But it's even beyond that. If you're a manufacturer, say you're in automotive manufacturing, there are industry compliance requirements that are out there from IATF or AIAG, where you still need to be compliant with certain standards that are in the industry. So how do you make sure that you are maintaining that compliance, you're reducing your audit findings, and that regulatory framework gives your customers the confidence that you're providing products that meet their needs as well. And then revenue. I mean, certainly that top line. So everything we've talked about right now has been bottom line, excuse me, but that top line, driving the revenue, better products, better quality, better reviews in the marketplace. And how many Yelp reviews do you look at on a weekly, monthly basis for maybe something you're buying or going out to dinner, whatever? Those reviews are out there. They're on Google, they're on Yelp, they're on different platforms. That is a very important and very impactful way to make sure that your quality is up where it needs to be by getting good reviews or driving good reviews. Happier customers, less results in terms of warranties and recalls and things like that can be pretty expensive otherwise. We did a recent survey, and warranty costs can drive $10 million, $50 million per recall. That's real significant money. So structured to really address both the top and the bottom line. And that's what we're going to look at now through the rest of this workshop in terms of how do we build the ROI story to address these items. So a few things that we'll do here for the next section of this workshop is look at how do we find the data? How do we best highlight the value of your QMS to the stakeholders in your organization? And, making sure that that data is available to you when you need it. Jennifer?
All right. Thank you, David. Okay. So before moving forward, I like to point out that if you don't have all of the information that you need to build your ROI, that is okay. So when we work with you, we have benchmarks to help you start the process. So how did we get these benchmarks, you might be wondering? We worked with a third-party company to help create them. So what they did was they interviewed over a dozen of our customers, ranging from discrete to process manufacturing, with some life science customers thrown in between. And the company size varied from enterprise to mid-market. So it created this really nice rounded sample set. And the goal was to understand the value that they got from a QMS. And with that data, we built this ROI model that helps us and helps you to come up with the ROI that you need to put your business case together. All right, so we're going to go through the inputs, the information, the data that will help build out this model. But the very first set of inputs is the ones that are unique to your organization. So this slide shows an example of the key variables that will help define the ROI specifically for you. So these inputs are tailored to your business and they will vary depending on your operations, your priorities, and the data that is available. And they're essential because they help us to understand the potential impact of your quality initiatives. And they also allow us to build a more accurate and relevant ROI picture that reflects across your organization's reality. Now, if you don't have all of the data points, that is perfectly okay. You can skip the fields or you can put in your best estimates. This model is really flexible and it's designed to be refined over time. So, this isn't about perfection. We're not looking for the answers on day one, but it's more about progress. You can always go back and revisit and update the inputs as more information becomes available. Okay, so we're going to go through the rest of the variables here and what they mean and how they contribute to the overall ROI calculation. So, first, we're going to start by looking at the soft costs. So, that's the indirect, non physical expense. And one of the key categories of a soft cost is reducing the risk of noncompliance. So, we're going to start with audit management here on the first line. So, think about the time spent for planning the audits, coordinating the schedules, gathering the documentation that you need, and reporting on the results. So, these activities are necessary, but they're also highly manual in many organizations. So, for this example, we're going to enter 6 days based on our customer benchmarks. They averaged about 6 to 7 days average. But when you're doing this, think about what the process looks like in your organization. Next, let's consider the number of audits that are conducted per year per auditor. So this helps the overall effort, or sorry, this helps to establish the overall effort that's required to maintain compliance. So the customer benchmarks, they tend to be on the high side here with 30 to 45 audits per year, but we're going to use a more conservative number because we really want this model to be realistic and defensible. So we're going to put 10 days in. All right, next we're going to look at the effort associated with external audits. So here you're going to think about the preparation, the documentation review, the interviews, and the follow-up activities that consume time across your organization. So in our example, we're going to use 40 hours per audit, but your actual number may vary depending on if you have regulatory requirements or how complex your organization is. Okay, for this one, we're going to take a look at the number of audits supported per year. So whether they're customer audits, regulatory, or a certification, they all require prep time and coordination across the teams. So we're going to use in our model 9 audits annually, and this falls within the middle of our range here of our benchmarks. Okay, next, you'll want to think about the number of people who you have supporting all of your external audits. So, do you have a small and mighty team, or a much bigger one that's global across many countries? So, for our example here, and actually with our benchmarks, we found that a lot of people are using small and mighty teams, about 2 to 3 people. So, we're going to go again conservative here with the number 2. All right, so one area that tends to be often overlooked when you think about the costs that are associated um, with being compliant are the ones for addressing the audit findings. So every finding requires an investigation, corrective action, documentation, and follow up. And these costs can add up quickly, especially in highly regulated industries. So for our example, we're going to pop in here $5,000 per finding. And then finally, let's consider the average number of findings identified during an audit. So this input really helps to quantify the potential impact of improving compliance processes and reducing the findings over time. So our customer benchmarks tend to be a little bit on the higher range, but we're going to, again, stay conservative and use 7 findings per audit for this example. So with this, we now have completed our first value driver, reducing the risk of noncompliance. Now I'm going to turn this over to David, and he's going to cover another major area of the ROI for soft costs, which is streamlining operations.
Thanks, Jennifer. So I think one of the key words that Jennifer used is defensible. And so we want to make sure that what we're seeing here is something that when you go to your CFO, your finance department, and a lot of these numbers may come from the finance department, may come from your own internal operations, but they got to be believable, right? Defensible and believable. We've had some initial reviews of the benchmarks and the data comes in really high in terms of the return on investment. And the reality is that a lot of times it is fairly high, a fairly significant return, but we want to make sure that the organization believes what you're putting forth, because a lot of times when you go forth with these different numbers, the organization is saying, okay, these become your MBOs, your OKRs. So you need to hit these numbers. So we want to make sure that it's something you can support as well. So when we look at streamlining operations, this really is in a lot of ways a soft cost, because if I'm going to save an hour, 2 hours per person, sometimes people look at that and say, okay, great, I'm not going to fire somebody, but you may be able to get higher value work out of somebody. You may avoid having to hire more people. So there are some potential harder cost savings along the way. But let's take a look at these streamlining of operations here. So the first is amount spent on document control per week per person. Again, we've gone on the lower end of that number, the 10 hours per week per person, but that can be significant. That's what, a couple hours a day, right? That somebody is not having to hunt for documents or manage documents as intensely as they do today. We look at the next area, that's setting up and managing non-conforming materials, those instances. And we see in a lot of manufacturing organizations, this becomes a real key function. We took the middle, in this case, the 2 hours for that. And the next area is managing customer complaints. Getting customer feedback is critical to any quality organization to make sure that you're able to respond and improve processes, improve product. We got, in this case, the benchmark was about 5 hours per complaint and having to deal with it across the organization. Receiving and inspecting supplier deliveries. So another area, we really haven't talked about suppliers yet, but suppliers can have a significant impact on the quality of your product. So making sure that what they're delivering is what you expect. So that inspection, again, 5 hours per delivery. That was what the benchmark was when we did the interviews. And then finally, the average time spent creating and managing supplier corrective action. So working with those suppliers. So if there's a problem, how do you resolve that effectively? And how much time does that normally take to do that?
All
Back
right,
over to you,
thanks,
Jennifer.
David. Yeah, thank you. All right, so before we move into the hard costs, I want to make an important distinction. As we said, so far we covered with soft costs. So think of the time savings and the productivity improvements that come from streamlining your processes and automating the manual work. And David touched on this a little bit, and we just want to be clear. The goal isn't to eliminate people. The goal is to free up your teams from administrative tasks so they can focus on those higher value activities that really drive the business forward. All right, so now with shifting to hard costs, these are the direct financial impacts that often show up on the balance sheet or in the income statement. So think of scrap, rework warranty claims, and inventory costs, just to name a few examples. So for many organizations, these savings can be substantial and are often easy to quantify when you're building your ROI case. So we're going to start here with the average scrap and rework costs for the year. So in our example, we're going to use $690,000. Next, we're going to look at field failures or warranty costs. So these are some of the most visible costs of poor quality because they occur after the product has reached the customer. So think about the warranty claims, product returns, replacement parts, all those internal resources that are required to investigate and resolve these issues. So if you know your warranty or field failure costs, this is where you'll use it. If not, that's okay. We'll go with our benchmark here, which you can assume is about 0.5% of the revenue. And we can use that as a starting point. Now, the next one is inventory carrying costs. So think again of the cost of holding inventory, including the storage fees, that extra inventory for those just in case moments, all of the capital that is tied up in products that are not moving through the business. And quality has a direct impact here. When processes are more predictable and product quality is more consistent, organizations can safely stock, minimize the extra inventory, and improve those inventory returns. So if your organization tracks inventory carrying costs, we'll put that value in here. If not, again, we've got the benchmarks that you can use as a starting point, and we'll go back and refine it later with your finance team or your operation teams. And as with all the other inputs, and I mentioned this before, the goal isn't to be perfect on day one. We want to establish a reasonable baseline so you can quantify the potential business impact of improving quality. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to David. He's going to cover the second half of the hard costs.
Sure. So beyond all the bottom line, everything we've talked about is bottom line, right? In terms of the cost. Now let's talk about the top line. Top line is growing revenue. And I talked about this a little bit before in terms of better customer outputs, better reviews, better customer satisfaction. But there are two areas that we look at. The first is estimated revenue from new products. If we're able to increase our satisfaction and people are more willing to buy from us, we certainly can get those revenues out there more quickly because we're able to reduce the time it takes to bring new products to market. We've had some customers, if you look at everything else we've talked about, streamlining operations and being more productive and things like that, have been able to reduce the amount of time it takes to bring a product to market by 70, 80%. So that certainly can have a significant revenue impact. So for example, here, driving new revenue from the research, we've seen our customers see up to a 30% increase in revenue for new products. We're going to be a little bit more conservative. We're going to use 10% for that estimated revenue from new products here, but certainly can be significant for an organization. And then the product development timeline, where we've seen 9 to 12 months. We've also seen customers who have seen, as I said, 70 or 80% reduction in the amount of time it takes to bring products to market. So if I can take a 12-month product life cycle and bring it down to 2 or 3 months, I can get that product into market faster and I can generate some of that revenue that's in that top line there faster for those products. So we need to look at both the estimated revenue for new products and the amount of time it would take that it normally takes to bring a product to market.
All right. Thank you, David. Now we've got the exciting part, the results. So this slide summarizes the overall return on investment based on the inputs we discussed. So this model that we created. And what you're seeing here is a breakdown of the ROI over 1 and 3 years with and without the revenue gains included. So let's take a look here at the cost savings and productivity improvements alone. So the ROI for the first year is 58%. And then for year 3, we're at 132%. Now, if we do include those revenue gains, such as faster time to market and improved customer satisfaction, that ROI increases even more. We're looking at 93% in year 1 and 184% over 3 years. Now, this is a really strong return, especially considering the payback period is just 6.2 months. So that means the investment in your QMS initially pays for itself in just over a half a year. Now, we've also separated the ROI with and without the revenue to give you flexibility. Some organizations prefer to focus only on cost and productivity, while others want to include the top line impact. But either way, the numbers show that quality initiatives are not just operational improvements. They're a strong strategic investment. And this is the kind of an ROI that really gets your leadership's attention. It's tangible, it's measurable, and it's aligned with your business goals. And I'm going to turn it over to David, and he's going to break it down by value driver.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. So one of the, we talked earlier about the 4 different areas that we look at savings, and we've taken a couple of different cuts of the data here, and based upon all the data that you've already seen on every one of the slides earlier, we've run the numbers, and in fact, these numbers come from a real customer that we deal with. So this is how we calculated out the ROI and how that, what Jennifer showed on the previous slide, breaks down across the 4 different areas. So you can see the actual dollars saved per area, years 1 through 3. Reducing the risk of noncompliance drove about 14% of the savings. Streamlining operations drove 60%. So that's a significant area where we see a lot of savings. Reducing costs and then growing and protecting revenue round out the other 2 areas. So these are how we are able to go to management and say, this is why we think this is going to work. And if people don't believe we're going to grow revenue, let's just focus on the bottom line. We can even just pull that out. So it gives you a lot of flexibility in how you start telling that story to management, how you translate what are quality metrics and quality initiatives into business metrics and business initiatives. And on the next slide, we'll show that just sliced a little differently, cost savings, productivity improvements, and revenue gains, just slightly different way of looking at the same data. And you can see that, again, it lines up with what we've entered and is really impactful, can be really impactful in terms of the way you tell the story. And so your leadership really can get a hold of this and understand it much more easily. And therefore, how you present this and how you talk about it to your leadership, you're really going to want to tailor this to your audience, and you're going to want to work with your finance department. For example, I worked with one customer who took, we did like, I'd say 5 or 6 different iterations. So as Jennifer said, this is not a one and done thing. We started with some assumptions and we iterated through them until we got to a believable, defensible number that they were happy with, that they could support with their management, that told the right story, and they were able to move forward with their procurement of a quality management system. So it was a lot of work, but at the end of the day, we got to the point where everybody was able to support the initiative. And I'll just add that they were not investing in a vacuum. They were asking for money compared to other initiatives that others in the organization were asking for money. And so they were successful in getting the investment they desired. turn it back over to Jennifer.
Yeah, thanks. So for a really detailed breakdown of the benefits, this is especially useful when you're presenting again to your executive stakeholders who want to understand what's driving the ROI. So you're going to notice that some of the areas show a higher percentage of savings, such as the first line item here, document control, which we often see a really big improvement in. These are activities where there's automation and there's process optimization, which have the biggest and most visible impact. So all those manual tasks have now been automated. Now, this level of detail will help you identify which areas are delivering the strongest returns. It'll help you to be able to prioritize where to focus your quality improvement efforts. And it's going to help you tailor that messaging based on what matters most to your stakeholders. Now, we have some items here that are highlighted, and they represent the most common and impactful improvements that we've seen across many organizations. So they're really a great starting point for you to start building your own ROI story. All right, so now we're going to go on to the executive summary. We're going to bring it all together. So here's a total summary of the impact of your quality initiative. So it's combining the cost savings, the productivity improvements, and the revenue gains. And it also highlights one of the most important metrics for decision makers. It's the payback period. And in our model here, we have 6.2 months. So in a SaaS environment, a payback period under 1 year is really a strong indicator of value. It shows that the investment in your QMS initiative delivers measurable returns quickly. And one important note on the ROI, while we've seen very high returns, and in some customer cases, which David had talked about, and he mentioned this, defensible and measurable. Because of that, again, we recommend taking a very conservative and supportive approach when you are presenting this to leadership. Again, you want to be able to stand behind those numbers very confidently, especially if your organization tracks the ROI post implementation. So, as David mentioned, are they going to be a part of your MBOs or your OKRs? Again, I'll say it one more time. This model is designed to be flexible and credible. So you can start with the benchmarks, refine with actual data, and then build a case that aligns with your organization's goals. And ultimately, this isn't about justifying the purchase of a system. It's showing how quality becomes a strategic driver across all of the business's performance. Okay, so we've showed you how to build the business case. Now let's talk about how Octave, and some of you may remember us as ETQ, so formerly ETQ here, can also help you to identify opportunities and accelerate those results.
All right, so let's take a quick look. Where do you find the data? It's not always easy to get this data. Let's be honest. And some folks will have better access to data than others. Some of you will have it in your quality department. Some of that will be metrics that you measure on a day-to-day basis. Some you may have to go to finance. You might have to go to IT. You might have to go to your auditing department. So they're depending on how large you are and how many different groups you have, the data is going to be scattered. That's why we did this research and came up with the benchmarks, is because it may not be easy to find all the data. So you can always use the benchmarks. As Jennifer said early on, we're not looking for perfection. And as she said, throughout the presentation, we're not looking for perfection here. We want to focus on what's most important. And if you can get the data, that's great. If you can't, we can always start with the benchmarks. And if you don't think something's important, we ignore it. You don't have to leverage every single thing that we talked about today. So not all those inputs will apply to your organization necessarily. Leverage the benchmarks if you can't find the data, and we start with even a subset to get started. and then iterate over time. The more we get into this, and we have found this over and over again with customers, especially once they get their finance departments and other teams involved, is the data seems to show up, or at least some level of data seems to show up that help us refine the model and become more accurate. And the other thing you'll notice that we kept saying as we went through this is be conservative as a starting point. Um, Again, I'll go back to the two words defensible and believable. Um, and those need to resonate with all this data needs to resonate with your management. So they don't laugh at you or throw you out of the room or, tell you that they don't believe what you're putting in front of them, that no one can get that high an ROI or no one can save that much money at the get-go. I mean, the other thing you have to realize is that this is something that you will implement over time. So the first year you might not see a huge ROI. By the second and third year, you might start to see that improvement as you go through here. So that's I think that gives us at least a grounding of where we are. And this is certainly one tool. This shouldn't be the only tool, but this is certainly one tool to help get the investment you need in your quality management system.
All right. Thanks, David. And I just would like to share, every organization that we work with, everyone's being asked to do more with less. And quality leaders who succeed are the ones who can demonstrate measurable business value. So by connecting these quality metrics to financial incomes, you can shift the conversation from why should we invest to how quickly can we get started? And that's where the Reliance team can really jump in and help you. All right, so we have now reached the part of our presentation for Q&A. Unfortunately, I can't see the Zoom
So
toolbar
I will be
box there. Yep.
I will, Jennifer. But before we do that, Dirk wants to set up another poll here.
Yeah, for those of you who need
Yes.
a certificate of attendance, if you didn't answer the previous poll, or even if you did, be sure you answer this one so that you can get your certificate. And I'll just leave this up. Go ahead, David.
All right. Thanks, Dirk. So, Jennifer, we did get a number of questions that did come in.
Oh, wonderful.
So we'll go ahead and start with from Michael. He said, for organizations operating multiple laboratory locations, multiple business units, multiple accreditation and regulatory programs under a shared quality management system, so sounds like a system that they use globally, how do you recommend developing enterprise level ROI metrics that demonstrate the business value of quality while still accounting for the unique operational and compliance requirements of each site? And my take would be I would chunk it out. I would not try to do it all globally at once. I would
Mhm.
take each of those business units and identify, because they probably have unique operating parameters, identify the return on investment for each of the operating units and then roll that up.
Agreed. You want to start small
Yeah.
and work your way up. Yeah.
Yes. Next question from Naveen is, how do we separate the financial impact of a quality improvement from other factors such as market demand, pricing, productivity, and sales performance?
I'll let you take that one, David.
Because it's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I think what we're trying to do, if we ignore the revenue piece of the ROI and we look at the bottom line impacts, the hard and the soft costs, those are mainly internal. So I would start with that. Certainly, those are costs that the organization incurs, whether you're talking about, what your suppliers charge you, right? Those are hard costs, right? What your carrying costs are for inventory, those are hard costs. Your hourly wage, those become part of the soft cost calculations. So I would start there. So that way we don't have to worry about pricing. We don't have to worry about performance, market demand, because that's the outbound part. That's the revenue generation part. So that's why we showed you with and without the revenue generation part of this. And then from Robin, productivity such as by streamlining reduces costs and increases profits, but does not increase revenue. Selling higher quality products and services generally has a positive effect on revenue selling more, not just reduce costs. Agreed, Robin.
Yeah.
And so that's again why we separate out the cost versus the revenue piece of it. And then Ali, how did we calculate the cost of remediations and audit findings? And I think we didn't do the calculations ourselves. We let our customers tell us how much they were actually spending. So the the cost you saw, the $5,000 per finding to remediate, was what the customers that we interviewed were finding, and in subsequent ROI analyses that we've done with a lot of customers, that number is held pretty consistently. So I will tell you that that's a benchmark. Um, I would go back and look at how many hours it takes to remediate. I would look at if there's a cost associated with any materials that are needed to remediate, to go into developing an actual cost for your own organization in terms of, how long it takes and how much effort and what costs would be. So the calculation for scheduling is in days per audit. However, there are 10 audits per year. Do you increase the hours per audit somewhere in your calculations? And we can adjust the number of days. So there are some very detailed controls when we look at ROI and the ROI model that we've put together that allow us to adjust the number of hours. So yes, the number of days. So we can do all sorts of tweaks to be more accurate in that calculation. So the answer is yes. We can increase the number of hours per audit. It asks how many hours we actually calculate or collect what the normal work day length is, 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours, whatever your normal work day would be, and use that as part of the calculation. And then Max said, just a comment, you can't always recoup costs at 100% rate due to cost of change, communication, implementation, getting people to stop wasteful activities. I don't know, Jennifer, if you have any thoughts on that.
No, he has a really good point. Recovering costs 100% doesn't seem realistic. So I would agree with that. Yeah.
So, and in the model, you can certainly make adjustments not to be at 100%, right?
Hmm.
Recovery as well, or however you want to tweak it. Then Jonathan, oh, he couldn't see everything on the screen. Sorry about that, Jonathan. Could not see the x-axis on the screen. I don't know if that was uh, a PowerPoint issue or presentation issue. Um, and then Jonathan here said, agree with about conservative, especially since even conservative estimates can be substantial. Also, I remind people that we don't need excruciating accuracy. The analogy I use is that we're not trying to differentiate whether the tiger is Siberian or Sumatran. We're trying to know whether we're looking at a mouse, a tiger, or a whale.
That's nice. I like that.
Mind if we steal that, Jonathan?
Yeah. Very true.
Yeah. And then John asked, do we have this in an Excel spreadsheet that can be shared?
So it is, uh, the model is built in Excel, and we do work with you to get the results. And uh, the way that we have found our best practices is because there are so many formulas that are built into the model. We work with sharing the results with you in a PowerPoint presentation that can be shared out. So we don't, because of the coding that is put in there. It can be a little bit challenging getting that shared with a wider audience. I don't know, Dave, if you wanted to add to that.
No, I think that's good. Wasim did say that in his experience, most organizations struggle to get a 3-year ROI. I don't know, Jennifer, what you think about that.
Well, so I would think the challenge is due to the tracking. So are they and the initial what was the initial goal and what were the initial savings? So staying true to that, keeping an eye on those metrics so that you can see that return in 3 years. The reporting that's surrounded around that. If there's any other advice you'd offer on that, David?
No, I think that covers it, Jennifer. Um, Cecilia asked, should we include or we include the cost or of approval or delays, several redundancies, approvals in each project? So how do we make sure that we know how long it's going to take to get to uh, the nirvana, I guess, or the promised land in some cases? And one of the things that we do is we include adoption as part of the analysis. I said we didn't get into all the some of the nuances that we look at in the model, but in our model we do look at an adoption rate. So if we think that it's going to be delayed or it's going to take longer to adopt the system, we can say in year one we're only going to get 25 or 30% adoption. Year two we may get 60%. Year three up to 100%. So you can account for time in terms of getting the value of the system. So that's certainly um, something that we take into account when we're looking at ROI. Um, so I think I got a couple of questions, one from Rochelle and one from Anna, that both apply to more of a services approach company. And there isn't non-conformances, there's not inspections. Um, we don't manufacture, it's a laboratory. How do we apply the model to that environment? And thinking about that, I would say let's eliminate everything from the model that doesn't apply. That's the beauty of this kind of a model, is that if you don't manufacture, let's get rid of the warranty piece of that. But you have document control. I know in laboratory settings, especially, documents are can be the lifeblood of the processes and procedures you follow to run a test or to do an activity, and therefore managing the documents more effectively and that document control can be a significant savings all by itself. So I would say let's start with the line items that we presented that make the most sense and then go from there. That's how I would start.
All right. Well, thank you for taking us through the Q&A session there, David. I believe we're at time here. We can definitely follow up with individuals who, if we didn't get to your questions, but I think we're at a point now we're ready to wrap it up. And thank you for your time. And Dirk, I don't know if you have any closing remarks for our audience.
Sure, you're all awesome. Jennifer and David, thanks for a great presentation. And obviously, thanks to our audience for attending. Several of you asked. Yes, you will be getting an email in about 24 hours with a link to a recording of the webinar. That'll be about this time tomorrow. Keep your eyes open for that. That'll come from Quality Digest. And as well, Octave usually sends out a PDF of the slides, and within a few days, that'll come from Octave. So keep your eyes open for that. And that is it. So from all of us here at Quality Digest and from Octave, formerly ETQ, thanks for joining us, and we will see you at the next webinar. So long.
Thank you.